All right, let's jump right into this. Welcome everyone to today's Explainer. I am so pumped to have you here because we are unpacking a truly incredible case study on grassroots business strategy over in Ghana. We're going to dive deep into the Samba Marara Investment Scheme, or SMIS. And specifically, we're going to laser focus on a completely unexpected, frankly brilliant pivot they made early on, switching their entire business model to bookshops. If you love understanding the nuts and bolts of how startups pivot to survive, you're in for a treat today.
Okay, I want you to picture this. 20,000 Ghana cedis, and we're talking about physical, hard cash. This is the exact tangible amount of startup capital that 5 original founders suddenly found themselves holding back in June of 2025. I mean, just imagine the sheer weight of holding that collective financial trust right in your hands. It's huge.
So back in June 2025, those 5 founders didn't just magically stumble into this money, right? They deliberately pooled their own resources. And why? Well, they had this stark, kind of painful realization. Working your whole life just to eventually die simply wasn't enough. They needed a vehicle to generate real, lasting wealth, but the traditional banking avenues were completely blocked off to them. They were basically locked out of the system.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the incredible vulnerability coming from Samba Marara CEO Joshua Agbanu. He literally admitted, "I haven't seen such money before in cash, but I had it lying in my hands, and then I needed to do something with it." You can just feel the pressure, can't you? It's one thing to have a cool business idea on a whiteboard. It's an entirely different beast when the physical cash of your friends and peers is sitting right there in your palms, screaming at you to do something with it.
Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to hit the 20,000 GHS dilemma, the massive pivot to bookshops, their operational trial by fire, the wider Samba Marara ecosystem, and finally, the modern SMIS reboot. Let's get to it.
Starting us off with Section 1, the 20,000 GHS dilemma, bypassing traditional banks.
Look, the founders formed SMIS out of absolute sheer necessity. Systemic barriers were everywhere. As the CEO pointed out, traditional banks over there primarily lend to people they already know. It's an insider's game. On top of that, their local savings and loan options were proving entirely ineffective. So they realized they needed their own collective vehicle to earn money. They wanted to fundamentally rewrite the script so they wouldn't just be working hard their whole lives with nothing to show for it in the end. That deep, shared frustration, that's the bedrock of this entire investment scheme.
Which brings us right to the core focus of our explainer today, Section 2, the pivot to bookshops and the board's big decision.
This is where it gets really clever. During a critical board meeting to deploy that 20,000 GHS, their very first instinct was the transport business. And hey, it makes sense. As the CEO explained, transport in Ghana is highly lucrative. But here is the genius of their pivot. While transport brings in a lot of money overall, they crunched the numbers and realized it actually wouldn't earn them the specific payout they needed in the short term. So, transport was the obvious temptation. But the bookshop? That was the pure mathematical solution they actually needed to hit their exact financial goals.
And why the math? Because they were up against a ticking clock. 9 months. That was their strict timeline for the investment to mature. That intense high-pressure window is exactly what forced the board to abandon the widely lucrative transport idea and pivot hard into a highly targeted bookshop strategy. They needed specific returns, and they needed them within exactly 9 months. No exceptions.
Moving on to Section 3, trial by fire. Because having a strategy on paper is one thing, but execution? That's a phase they literally described as problem after problem.
Right, so once that 20,000 GHS was injected into the new bookshop, reality hit them like a ton of bricks. Everything was smooth until day-to-day operations began. And then, boom, problem after problem. But listen to how Joshua Agbanu reframed this. He said, "All these problems were just teaching us how to run a business because none of us have gone to the school." I absolutely love that. Instead of throwing in the towel, they treated this chaotic, stressful phase as a real-time, uncredentialed business school. The market itself was their professor.
Actually, we do need to look at the hard consequences of those problems, though. Because of that brutal learning curve, their strict 9-month timeline, they officially blew right past it. Payouts ended up stretching well beyond the original mark. CEO Joshua Agbanu literally had to go public and issue a massive thank you to the investors for their deep patience and understanding during those rough times. So they survived, but they definitely missed their deadline.
Let's pull the camera back a bit now. Section 4, the Samba Marara ecosystem, focusing on fashion and expansion.
So the broader Samba Marara Groupe is wildly ambitious.
We're not just talking about a grassroots investment scheme in a bookshop here. They've built a whole fashion accessory empire. And it's highly calculated. Look at these dominance zones across major Ghanaian cities. Customized shirts ruling Accra, good heavy shirts up in Kumasi, general clothing holding down Takoradi, and watches dominating Tamale. It's a strategic, multi-city retail footprint that prioritizes affordability and punctuality.
To really anchor that massive fashion expansion, they needed a face for the brand, which brings us to this wild timeline. So before November 2024, the initial winner of their ambassador search, a woman named Christabel, actually declined the role for personal reasons, but the CEO just used that setback as motivation. Enter Rose Amelli. She's a brilliant Ghanaian journalist who hosted the Samba with Faith segment. She jumped into the competition, racked up 3,059 online views and 114 points as the second runner-up. And by November 2024, she was officially crowned the new brand ambassador for the whole Group. Talk about a comeback.
Which brings us full circle to today, Section 5, the SMIS reboot, opening the borders. Today, the group has officially reopened the borders of the Samba Marara Investment Scheme to the public. It's being promoted heavily by their new ambassador, Rose Amelli, who's out there actively inviting people to build together and make what she calls cool cash. But the absolute biggest takeaway here? This rebooted scheme isn't starting from scratch. It's entirely backed by the sweat equity and the hard-learned lessons from those early bookshop days. They took their lumps, they learned business the hard way, and now they are leveraging that gritty education to manage brand new capital.
So, I want to leave you with this thought to chew on. Knowing that the transport sector was practically guaranteed money, would you have had the strict, unwavering discipline to pivot your 20,000 Ghana cedis into a bookshop just to hit a mathematical timeline? And seeing how they survived problem after problem, are you ready to invest in a team that learned business the absolute hardest way possible? It's just a fascinating glimpse into real, ground-level business strategy. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today to explore this incredible explainer. Catch you next time.